Hi, it's Charlotte Stevens with Healing Racism in Schools, your favorite truth teller and dismantler of white supremacy. You'll love that. You'll love it. A trend that I have seen in elementary schools that I find disturbing and triggering is saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Why do we still do this? I don't know. So, the Pledge of Allegiance has a racist history. The man who wrote it, Francis Bellamy, in 1891, I believe it um, was a racist. So let's be clear about the character of the person who wrote this. And it was all about, nationalism and really defining true Americanness. It was at the time when I want to say whites, but it's tricky because white people, it was at a time when certain people that we call white now were not considered white then. So there was a lot of racism against like the Italians and I think the Slavs and Jews, etc. So they were trying to find real Americanism, and that was seen as like the Northern European, the English and the British. So and then that Bellamy was assimilationist. So somebody who would tell me, "Oh, go ahead and straighten your hair, Charla," or don't have any pride in being black and try your best to just blend in and be as white as possible. So that's the person who wrote the Pledge of Allegiance. He had a lot of racist views. In addition to the Pledge of Allegiance was constructed to instill this whole idea of nationalism to sell it was supposed to be commemorating the 400th anniversary of super racist Christopher Columbus discovering America. He didn't discover America. He never set foot on our soils. He was a horrible person, and our country would be better if he had never showed up. He started genocide. He was a pedophile. He was a horrible person. I despise Christopher Columbus. I despise the way he's idealized. He was not the first person to travel here. There's evidence of other people. He started a genocide. I despise Christopher Columbus. Columbus Day should be Indigenous Day. Why are we celebrating this mass murderer, this pedophile? Like, only a white man could get away with being a mass murderer and a pedophile. And then have a day in his honor. Awesome. Anyway, it was all about celebrating Christopher Columbus and instilling this idea of nationalism in schools and and creating this patriotic programming in our schools. So, knowing that, why would we require our young people to say it unless our agenda is to brainwash them and is to indoctrinate them with this fake spirit of nationalism and basically white supremacy? Like, it's propaganda to uphold and support white supremacy. So I have an issue with it, and I have an issue with it especially the schools I've been at lately. Like I've been in California, so this is supposed to be like the liberal, like woke area, and it's like I'll be at schools where they have other great programs in place. Where their suspension, they have programs in place where their suspension rates are going down, and they have restorative justice, and they're having conversations about white supremacy and white privilege, and yet they start their day by saying the Pledge of Allegiance and telling students that they have to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I take issue with this on so many levels. Like I said, me just being present when people are saying the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm triggered. Real talk, I'm triggered by the American flag because I'm just like, whenever I see it, when I see too many American flags or even just the American flag in general, I'm just like, what is it? Why would people have pride? I don't understand why people would be proud to be an American. And yes, I have a unique experience as an African American, but I just feel like if you genocide of Native Americans, that's something to be proud of. 400 years of slavery of my people, that's something to be proud of. The exploitation of brown labor, of Asian labor, that's something to be proud of. Like, all of the murders we have, like, I don't understand what there is to be proud of. I don't like the American flag. I don't meet people who are really patriotic, who are also socially conscious and who are all about social justice. That typically does not go hand in hand. So the flag in general triggers me. I don't like it. I'm certainly not going to pledge allegiance to it. The flag doesn't pledge allegiance to me. We have a whole Black Lives Matter, movement happening in 2019, which is very similar to when black people had to wear sandwich boards saying, I am a man. We're still having to defend our humanity in this country. So this country has no allegiance to me, has no love for me. So, but I'm supposed to pledge allegiance to it. Why? My people have done enough, shed enough blood, sweat, and tears. This country's built on our backs, built on our graves. We've done enough. This country owes, if anything, America should be pledging allegiance to me. I'm not pledging allegiance to the flag. And in addition to, why don't we have discussions about what the Pledge of Allegiance means? If we're going to force our students to say it, which is like against their rights, like you shouldn't be forcing them to say it, but it's always like highly encouraged, and they're told to take off your hats, and you need to stand and put your hand over your heart. No, you don't. That's not a requirement to be in school. So we should let children know that they have a choice. We should talk about what this pledge means, and then have them think critically about whether or not it makes sense for them, and not force them to pledge allegiance to a nation that clearly is not looking out for so many of us. Basically, unless you're a rich hetero, white man, cis white man, that's the only people they're looking out for. So if you're poor and white, if you're a woman, if you're of the LGBT or trans community, if you're of color, if you're a Muslim, there's so many people that this country is not pledging allegiance to. I remember I had this elementary school class, and I was just guest teaching for that day, and they saw me not pledge. And so we talked about that. I said, let me tell you why I didn't pledge. I said, I have problems with lines like, with liberty and justice for all. I don't feel like that's the country we live in. I don't feel like I've experienced liberty and justice. I know that if I was a rich white male, my experience would be completely different from what I experience as a black female. So I can't resonate with that, and I'm not going to front like I do. And after I said that, I was in a fourth grade class. A lot of the kids were like, that makes a lot of sense. And they start to think about it as well. So I just feel like as educators, allow them to critically think, allow them to make a choice as to whether or not they want to say the pledge. Stop this propaganda, stop this brainwashing, this nationalism. What is that about? And nationalism tends to be rooted in bigotry. And especially at times like this, I cannot get down with pledging allegiance to the flag when we have Trump in office and all of this racism that is coming to light. So I really urge educators and schools to think critically about this issue, because it's problematic. Like I said, every time I'm in a school where they do the Pledge of Allegiance, I'm triggered. And so now my energy is, I'm triggered instead of being the best person I could be, the best leader I could be in this moment. What about our students? How do they feel saying the Pledge of Allegiance? How do our little Latino kids feel about saying the Pledge of Allegiance when they are having people talk about build a wall and the fear of being deported, or hearing about little kids in cages? What is that experience like for them? What's it like for our students of color who are fearing the police and don't feel safe around the police, or don't feel that they're valued, and then they're saying Pledge of Allegiance? What's it like for our Muslim students who feel targeted just because of their religion? What's it like for our trans students who know that their humanity is not valued, who are still highly at risk for being murdered? What's it like for all of them to say the Pledge of Allegiance? And how is the Pledge of Allegiance causing more trauma and triggering students in ways that you might not be conscious of? So I am Charlotte Stevens with Healing Racism Healing Racism in Schools. And these are things that we need to think about. We need to understand that our system is inherently racist, and there's all kind of things that we don't question or don't consider that are affecting students and staff. So if you would like to see what practices at your school are racist, notice I didn't say if your school is racist. I said if you want to know what practices at your school are racist, please schedule a phone call with me, because I would love to see what we can do as far as creating possibilities for your school. But until we acknowledge the problem, we cannot deal with the problem. So again, I am Charlotte Stevens with Healing Racism in Schools. Please schedule a call. I would love to see what possibilities we can create for your school, because as you know, our students deserve better. Thank you.